In Ogami, Okinawa, the rate of dementia after age 85 is among the lowest ever recorded for any human population. In the United States, nearly half of adults over 85 have some form of it. Same species, same brain, same aging biology. The only thing separably different is what happens in the first 5 minutes of the day. The Okinawa Centenarian Study tracked more than 1,000 people aged 100 and older on this island for over 5 decades. Not a short study, not a survey. 50 years of observation, published data, peer-reviewed findings. What those researchers documented was not a population with a rare genetic gift. Okinawans carry no biological advantage that the rest of us lack. What they found was a population with an 80% lower rate of heart disease than Americans, a 25% lower rate of breast and prostate cancer, and functional mobility, the ability to move without assistance, maintained well into the 9th and 10th decade of life. Researchers went in looking for a mechanism, a gene variant, a rare food, a supplement. What they found instead was a morning habit so simple, so brief, and so consistent that most Western scientists initially didn't think to measure it. It took years before anyone realized it was the thing worth studying. You've been told that staying healthy after 60 requires sustained effort. 30 minutes of cardio, 3 days a week, a gym membership, a structured program with progressive overload and rest days built in. The fitness industry has been selling that idea for 40 years. It frames health as something you earn, session by session, in a dedicated block of time you schedule into your calendar like a meeting. Okinawan centenarians don't do that. They never have. And they outlive us anyway. Here is what's actually going on. The benefit of movement doesn't come from intensity. It comes from consistency. 5 minutes every single morning is not a lesser version of a 60-minute gym session 3 times a week. For the body of a person over 60, it is a fundamentally different mechanism. One builds a habit the nervous system absorbs and no longer questions. The other creates a cycle of effort and recovery that the body of a 65-year-old never quite fully adapts to and eventually rejects. In this video, we're going to cover 3 things. First, the practice itself. What radio Taiso is, exactly what it does to the body, and why Harvard Health Publishing recommended it in 2024. Second, the environment. The one variable Okinawans combine with it that almost no Western person replicates, and that multiplies the effect significantly. And third, the social layer. The piece that researchers almost overlooked entirely. The one that separates a morning routine that lasts 2 weeks from one that lasts 70 years. That third piece I'll save for the end. It only makes complete sense once the first 2 are in place. But before all of that, the reason the gym culture got this wrong matters. Because understanding the mistake is what makes the Okinawan approach legible. The fitness industry built itself around performance goals. Muscle gain, fat loss, athletic output. Those are real goals with real physiological pathways. But the protocols designed to hit those goals were built for bodies that recover fast. Bodies in their 20s and 30s, where stress applied to the system produces adaptation within 48 to 72 hours. What changes after 60 is that the recovery window widens significantly. The body doesn't bounce back from high-intensity stress the way it did at 35. And when someone over 60 attempts a gym routine they cannot sustain and then stops, which is what happens the majority of the time, they don't just lose the physical gains. They often lose whatever baseline movement habit existed before. The floor drops. The false culprit the fitness industry sold is this: that the problem is insufficient effort. That if you push harder, show up more consistently, tolerate more discomfort, the result will follow. Okinawan centenarians disprove that entirely. The practice correlated with their health outcomes requires almost no effort at all. It is low intensity, brief, and has been performed continuously for nearly a century by millions of people who do not experience it as exercise. They experience it as mourning. That is the first thing to understand. Now here is what the practice is. Radio Taiso, in Japanese, Ragio Taiso, is a calisthenic exercise program that has aired on Japanese public radio every morning since 1928. It was developed by the Postal Life Insurance Bureau as a national health initiative and has been broadcast continuously ever since. The program consists of 13 rhythmic movements set to a specific piano composition. The movements include arm circles, lateral trunk bends, rotations, knee bends, and full-body stretches. The session comes in two versions. Radio Taiso number 1 runs 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Number 2 runs 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Together, just over 6 minutes of movement. Most people in Okinawa do one or both versions every morning, outdoors or near an open window, before eating anything. Here is what it does to the body specifically. A randomized controlled trial published in 2024 by researchers at the Tokyo Metropolitan Institute for Geriatrics and Gerontology enrolled 226 older adults with pre-frailty or diagnosed frailty, people whose physical decline had already measurably begun, and assigned half of them to a 12-week Radio Taiso program. The other half received nutritional guidance only. At the end of 12 weeks, the Radio Taiso group showed significant improvements in agility, dynamic balance, aerobic endurance, and exercise self-efficacy. That last measure matters more than it might sound. Exercise self-efficacy is the belief that you are capable of continuing. The group that did Radio Taiso didn't just improve physically. They became measurably more confident that they would keep going. The daily adherence rate across that trial was 94.1%. For reference, the average adherence rate in most supervised exercise interventions sits somewhere between 40 and 60%. People almost never quit Radio Taiso. Think about what that number means for someone who is 64 years old and has started and stopped a gym routine 4 times in the past decade. The problem was never motivation. It was sustainability. 3 minutes is sustainable in a way that 45-minute sessions are not. The body does not resist it. The mind does not negotiate with it on Tuesday morning when it's raining and you slept badly. It simply happens, day after day after day. And it is that repetition, not the intensity, that produces the outcome. A second study, the JAGES cohort, which tracked 18,016 adults over age 65 across 19 municipalities in Japan for an average of 5.3 years, found that regular practice of Radio Taiso was associated with an 18% reduction in dementia risk compared to non-practitioners. That's not a marginal finding. That's 18% from 3 minutes a day in a study of 18,000 people followed for over 5 years. Here is the physical test. Right now, wherever you are, try this. Stand up from your seat without using your hands. Just stand. If you needed one or both hands to push yourself up, your hip flexors, glutes, and core are not coordinating the way they should. Radio Taiso's knee bend and trunk rotation sequences directly address that coordination gap. Within 2 weeks of daily practice, most people find they can stand with noticeably less effort. Not a transformation, a specific, observable, measurable change that you can track in your own body. The Tier 1 protocol is this. Find the Radio Taiso #1 video on YouTube. It is free, widely available, and runs exactly 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Do it every morning before you eat. Not after your coffee is ready. Not after you've checked your phone. Before all of that. Use a chair nearby for support during the knee bends if you need it in the first week. Focus on completing the full sequence, not on doing each movement perfectly. That is the complete first tier. 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Every morning. Nothing else changes yet. Something shifts around 6 weeks in that the study didn't directly measure, but that appears consistently in accounts from regular practitioners. The morning starts to feel differently ordered. Not energizing in any dramatic sense, just less effortful to begin. The movement becomes the signal that the day has started, rather than something that takes effort to initiate. That shift matters, and it connects directly to the third piece of this system. which I'll come back to near the end, because it only makes sense once the second part is in place. Now the second part. In August 2024, Harvard Health Publishing, not a wellness site, not a supplement company, published a piece specifically recommending Radio Taiso to readers. The piece documented participant reports of improvements in flexibility, stamina, balance, and energy levels. And it noted, almost as an aside, that the practice is typically performed outdoors, in a garden, on a sidewalk, in a park, with neighbors present. Most people reading a Harvard recommendation for a Japanese morning exercise program focus on the movement. Almost no one focuses on the location. Here is why that detail changes the equation entirely. Natural light in the first hour after waking is the primary regulatory input for the human circadian system. When morning light hits the retina, it triggers a signal through the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master clock in the hypothalamus, that synchronizes every biological process in the body. Cortisol rises on schedule, melatonin falls appropriately, body temperature follows its correct curve, digestion activates, cardiovascular function calibrates. This cascade is not optional. It is the foundation on which the rest of the body's daily operation is built. When you do Radio Taiso outdoors, or directly in front of an open window, you're delivering two of the most powerful regulatory inputs a body over 60 can receive at exactly the same moment. Movement that activates the musculoskeletal system, and light that resets the circadian system. Both in under 4 minutes. The Western gym habit systematically breaks these apart. Someone drives to an indoor fitness center at 7 a.m. under fluorescent lighting. The movement is present. The light signal is absent. 3 nights later, that person sleeps poorly, wakes up groggy, experiences an afternoon energy crash. They attribute this to age or stress or diet. The circadian component, the one that was never addressed, never enters the analysis. Gerontologist Kazuhiko Taira, who spent years in direct fieldwork studying the oldest residents of Ogimi, documented something consistent across the population. They open their doors early. They step outside. They let the morning reach them before the day asks anything of them. That behavior, which looks like nothing in particular, is doing something measurable at the biological level. Research on morning light exposure in adults over 60 shows improvements in sleep architecture, mood regulation, and sustained cognitive function. For a body in its 7th or 8th decade, circadian disruption is one of the primary upstream drivers of accelerated physical decline. The modern trap is not dramatic. It's the blackout curtain, the phone in bed before standing up, the indoor gym with no windows, the commute that happens before a single minute of natural daylight. These are small, accumulated errors that a fitness culture focused entirely on muscular output never learned to account for. The Tier 2 protocol is a single addition to what you are already doing. Take Radio Taiso outside, or stand directly in front of an open window, not behind glass, which filters the specific light frequencies that matter, for the duration of the 3-minute routine. If winter or weather makes outdoor practice impossible, find the brightest room in the house and open a window for those 3 minutes. Face the light source. This is not a complicated change. It is a positional change, and it converts what you are doing from a movement practice into a full morning reset for the body's regulatory systems. If this is landing for you, subscribe to the Blue Zone Way. Every week we go into one zone, one documented practice, one system you can actually use. No supplements, no programs with end dates. Just what the world's longest-lived populations have been doing for a very long time. Now the third part, the piece that explains why Radio Taiso maintains a 94% adherence rate when virtually every other exercise protocol eventually collapses. When researchers studying the Okinawa Centenarian Study went into villages like Ogimi and Nakajin to observe daily habits in detail, they found Radio Taiso being performed in groups. Not always organized groups, sometimes 2 people, sometimes a neighbor who appeared at the garden gate every morning without ever formally agreeing to. sometimes a loose gathering of 6 or 7 people at a community center courtyard. What the researchers initially categorized as a social phenomenon turned out to be inseparable from the health phenomenon. They were the same thing. In Okinawan culture, this pattern has a name, moai, a word that translates approximately as a meeting for shared purpose. A moai is a small, consistent social network, not a club, not an organization, simply the people with whom you share regular, unremarkable moments, the people who notice when you are not there. The JAGES study, the same 18,016-person cohort that documented the dementia reduction, found that social network size and quality predicted functional disability and dementia outcomes with the same statistical weight as physical exercise. Not as a secondary factor, not as a contributing variable, with equal predictive power. 2 people performing the identical physical routine, one in isolation and one with a regular companion, were not on the same long-term health trajectory. The social component was not an enhancement. It was half the mechanism. This is also the reason the fitness industry cannot replicate it. A moai is not purchasable. There is no app for it. There is no subscription tier. It has to be constructed from whoever is already around you. A spouse, a sibling, a neighbor, a friend who agrees to send a text when they've finished their 3 minutes. It costs nothing. It requires no scheduling. It requires only the decision to make the habit shared rather than private. And when that decision is made, something changes that no fitness protocol accounts for. The habit becomes accountable to someone beyond yourself. Not in a pressurized way, not in a way that adds guilt when you miss. In the way that shared routine adds a layer of meaning that private routine cannot generate on its own. Okinawan centenarians who have been doing this for 60 or 70 years do not do it because they have calculated the health return. They do it because it is what happens in the morning with the people they know. The health outcome is the byproduct of something that was never really about health in the first place. The Tier 3 addition is this. Find one person, one is sufficient, to do this alongside you, in person or by text. Agree to a simple daily signal, something as minimal as a one-word message that says it's done. That is the complete protocol. The group does not need to be large. It does not need to be formal. It only needs to exist. The element that no fitness coach mentions is this. What makes Radio Taiso work across decades is not the movement sequence. It is not even the morning light. It is that in Okinawa, the practice is shared. And when you replicate that condition, you replicate the durability of the outcome. The reason modern workout culture produces cycles of starting and stopping, the thing I said I'd come back to, comes down to structural fragility. A solo habit depends entirely on the internal motivation of one person, sustained against every competing demand in a morning. It has no external support. When motivation dips, which it always does for everyone, there is nothing holding the habit in place. Okinawan centenarians resolve this not through greater discipline, but through structural design. The habit is attached to other people. Shared habits have a different failure mode. They do not quietly collapse the way private ones do. Here is how the complete system runs in a single morning. 3 minutes and 10 seconds of Radio Taiso number 1. Before food, before screens, before anything else. Done outside or in front of an open window in direct morning light. Done with the awareness that someone else is doing it too, or with a check-in that makes the practice mutual. Total time, under 5 minutes. Total cost, nothing. Total equipment, none. What changes in 7 days is modest but real. Mornings feel less effortful to begin. Not dramatically energized, just less resistant. The movement becomes assumed rather than decided. At 30 days, the physical changes from the first study become personally observable. The stand-up test from earlier, no hands, gets easier. Morning joint stiffness resolves faster than it did before. At 90 days, the habit is no longer a habit in the willpower sense. It has become structural. The Okinawan centenarians, who have done this for 5 or 6 decades, do not think of it as something they maintain. It is simply what happens before the rest of the day begins. Here is the central difference. Western fitness culture sells programs. Programs have end dates. They frame movement as a temporary effort toward a future result, a transformation, a challenge completed, a goal reached. Okinawans have no program. They have a practice. And that distinction, a practice rather than a program, is what explains the difference between someone who has moved every morning for 70 years and someone who has completed 7 fitness programs and stopped each one. The one action for today is this. Find Radio Taiso #1 on YouTube. Stand near an open window. Do the 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Nothing more than that. Not a commitment to a new routine. Just today. If you want to go further into every blue zone we cover, Okinawa, Sardinia, Ikaria, Nicoya, Loma Linda, subscribe to the Blue Zone Way. One zone, one practice, one system per video. The kind of thing you can use before the week is out. One question for the comments. In the first 15 minutes after you wake up tomorrow morning, what is the first thing you do? Drop it in the comments, because that answer tells you more about your long-term health direction than almost any other single data point. In Ojimi, the doors open early. The mornings are not rushed. The movement is brief and shared and unremarkable. And the people doing it are still doing it at 90 and at 95 and occasionally past 100. 5 minutes, every morning, with someone who knows.